Good evening, everybody. This is Joe, and welcome to my channel, Joe's Elite Theology. And today I would like to talk about a specific topic of going back and looking at the beginning and some of the tales that we've been told throughout time. And what got me interested to make another video was I was reading into King Arthur, and most of y'all know who King Arthur is. He is the legendary British leader of the 5th to supposed 6th centuries, who according to medieval histories and romances led the defense of Britain against Saxon invaders in the supposed 6th century. But his life and, his tales of valor and grandeur is not what excites me. What got me thinking and intrigued is his death, because in some accounts King Arthur was taken to the Isles of Avalon to be healed, and what happened to him after reaching the island is still a mystery. Some say he lies in a cave, awaiting the day he is needed again by his country. Others say King Arthur that he died in Avalon. But I want to read something back from what I just said. Some say he lies in a cave, awaiting the day he is needed again. Some say he lies in a cave. Well, what significance does that have? Well, let's bring this back to the beginning. I want to talk about the book of the Cave of Treasures and the story of Adam and Eve. I'm going to take you through creation up until the very point that Adam and Eve got expelled from heaven along with the other angels. The creation, the first day. In the beginning, on the first day, which was the holy first day of the week, the chief and the firstborn of all days, God created the heavens and the earth and the waters and the air and the fire and the host which were invisible, that is to say, the angels, archangels, thrones, lords, principalities, powers, cherubim and seraphim, and all the ranks and companies of spiritual beings, and the light and the night and the daytime, and the gentle winds and the strong crashing storms. All these were created on the first day. And on the first day of the week, the Spirit of holiness, one of the persons of the Trinity, hovered over the waters, and through the hovering thereof over the face of the waters were blessed, so that they might become producers of offspring. And they became hot, and the whole nature of the waters glowed with heat, and the leaven of creation was united to them, as the mother bird makes warm her young by the embrace of her closely covering wings, and the young birds acquire from them the warmth of the heat which they derive from her. So through the operation of the Spirit of holiness, the Spirit, the Paraclete, the leaven and breath of life, which united to the waters, when he hovered over them. The creation, the second day. And on the second day, God made the lower heaven and called it Rakia, Rekia. This he did that he might make known that the lower heaven does not possess the nature of the heaven which is above it, and that it is different in appearance from that heaven which is above it. From the heaven above it is a fire, and the second heaven is Nuhra, Nuhra, and this lower heaven is Darpition, Darpition, and because it hath the dense nature of water, it hath been called Rakia. And on the second day God made a separation between the waters and the waters, that is to say, between the waters which were above and the waters which were below. And the ascent of these waters which were above heaven took place on the second day. And they were like unto a dense black cloud of thick darkness, thus where he raised up there. And they mounted up, and behold, they stand above Rakia in the air, and they do not spread, and they do not make any motion to any side. The creation, the third day. And on the third day God commanded the waters that were below the firmament to be gathered together in one place, and the dry land appear. And when the covering of the water had been rolled up from the face of the earth showed itself to be an unsettled and unstable state. That is to say, it was a moist and yielding nature, and the waters were gathering together into seas that were under the earth and within it, and upon it. And God made in the earth from below corridors and shafts and channels for the passages of water, and the winds which come from within the earth ascend by means of these corridors and channels, and also the heat and the cold for the service of the earth. Now, as for the earth, the lower part of it is like unto a thick sponge, for it rests on the waters. And on this third day God commanded the earth, and it brought forth herbs and vegetables, and it conceived in its interior trees, and seeds, and plants, and roots. The creation. The fourth day. And on the fourth day God made the sun, and the moon, and the stars. And as soon as the heat of the sun was diffused over the surface of the earth became hard and rigid, and lost its flaccidity, because the humidity and the dampness caused by the waters were taken away from it. The Creator made the sphere of the sun of fire, and filled it with light. And God gave unto the sphere of the moon and the stars bodies of water and air, and filled them with light. And when the dust of the earth became hot, it brought forth all the trees and plants and seeds, and the roots which had been conceived inside it on the third day. The creation, the fifth day. And on the fifth day God commanded the waters, and they brought forth all kinds of fish in divers appearances, and creatures which move about, and twist themselves, and wriggle in the waters, and serpents, and the leviathan, the beasts of terrible aspects, and feathered fowl of the air, of the waters. And on this same day God made from the earth all the cattle and wild beasts, and all the reptiles which creep about upon the earth. The creation, the sixth day. And on the sixth day, which is the eve of the Sabbath, God formed man out of the dust, and Eve from his rib. And on the seventh day God rested for his labors, and it is called Sabbath. The creation of Adam. Now the formation of Adam took place in this wise. On the sixth day, which is the eve of the Sabbath, at the first hour of the day, when quietest and reigning over all the ranks and the host, God said, Come ye, let us make man in our image, and according to our likeness. Now by this word, us, he makes knowing concerning the glorious persons. And when the angels heard this utterance, they fell into a state of fear and trembling. And they said to one another, A mighty miracle will be made manifest to us this day, that is to say, the likeness of God our Maker. And they saw the right hand of God opened out flat, and stretch out over the whole world, and all the creatures were collected in the palm of his right hand. And they saw he took from the whole mass of the earth 1 grain of dust, and from the whole nature of water 1 drop of water, and from all the air which is above 1 puff of wind, and from the whole nature of fire a little of its heat and warmth. And the angel saw that when these 4 inert materials were placed in the palm of his right hand, this is to say, cold and heat and dryness and moisture, God formed Adam. Now for what reason did God make Adam out of these 4 materials, unless it were to show that everything which is in the world should be in subordination to him through him? He took a grain from the earth in order that everything in nature which is formed of the earth should be subject unto him, and a drop of water in order mysteries of heaven, that everything which is in the seas and rivers should be his, and a puff of air, so that all kinds which fly in the air might be given unto him, and the heat of fire, so that all things being of that fiery in nature, and the celestial host might be his helpers. God formed Adam with his holy hands, in his own image and likeness, and when the angels saw Adam's glorious appearance, they were greatly moved by the beauty thereof. For they saw the image of his face burning with glorious splendor, like the orb of the sun, and the light of his eyes were like the light of the sun. And the image of his body was like unto the sparkling of crystal. And when he rose at full length and stood upright in the center of the earth, he planted his 2 feet on that spot whereupon was set upon the cross of the Redeemer. For Adam was created in Jerusalem. There he was arrayed in the apparel of sovereignty, and there was the crown of glory set upon his head. This was he made king and priest and prophet. There did God make him to sit upon his honorable throne, and there did God give him domination over all creatures and things, and all the wild beasts and all the cattle, and all the feathered fowl were gathered together, and they passed before Adam, and he assigned names to them. And they bowed their heads before him, and everything in nature worshipped him, and submitted themselves unto him. And the angels and the host of heaven heard the voice of God saying unto him, Adam, behold, I have made thee king, and priest, and prophet, and Lord, and head, and governor of everything which hath been made and created. And they shall be in subjugation until thee, and they shall be thine. And I have given unto thee power over everything which I have created. And when the angels heard this speech, they all bowed the knee and worshipped him. The revolt of Satan and the battle in heaven. And when the prince of the lower order of angels saw what great majesty had been given unto Adam, he was jealous of him from that day, and he did not wish to worship Adam. And he said unto his host, Ye shall not worship him, and ye shall not praise him with the angels. It is meet that ye should worship me, because I am fire and spirit, and not that I should worship a thing of dust, which hath been fashioned of fine dust. And the rebel meditating these things would not render obedience to God, and of his own free will he asserted his independence and separation, and separated himself from God. But he was swept away out of heaven and fell, and the fall of himself and all his company from heaven took place on the Satana, because he turned aside, and Sheda, Sheda, because was cast out, and Dawa, Daiwa, because he lost the apparel of his glory. And behold, from that time until the present day, he and all hosts have been stripped of their apparel, and they go naked and have horrible faces. And when Satana was cast out from heaven, Adam was raised up so that he might ascend to paradise in a chariot of fire. And the angels went before him singing praises, and the seraphim ascribed holiness unto him, and the cherubim ascribed blessing. And amid cries of joys and praises Adam went into paradise. And as soon as Adam entered paradise, he was commanded not to eat of a certain tree. His entrance into heaven took place at the 3rd hour of the eve of the Sabbath. The making of Eve. And God cast a sleep upon Adam, and he slept. And God took a rib from the loins on the right side of Adam, and he made Kawa from it, Khawa. And when Adam awoke and saw Eve, he rejoiced in her greatly. And Adam and Eve were in paradise, and clothed with glory, and shining with praise for 3 hours, when the paradise was situated on a high range of hills, and it was 30 spans, according to the measurement of the Spirit, higher than all the high mountains, and it surrounded the whole earth. Now Moses the prophet said that God planted paradise in Eden, and placed Adam there. The symbolism of Eden. Now Eden is the holy church, and the church is the compassion of God, which he was about to extend to the children of men. For God, according to his foreknowledge, knew what Satan had devised against Adam. And therefore he set Adam beforehand in the bosom of his compassion, even as the blessed David sings concerning him in the psalm, saying, Lord, thou hast been an abiding place for us throughout all generations. That is to say, thou hast made us to have our abiding place in thy compassion. And when entreating God on behalf of the redemption of the children of men, David said, Remember thy church, which thou did acquire in olden time. That is to say, remember thy compassion, which thou art to spread over our feeble race. Eden is the holy church, and the paradise which was in it is the last of rest and the inheritance of life which God hath prepared for all the holy children of men. And because Adam was priest and king and prophet, God brought him into paradise that he might minister in Eden, the holy church, even as the blessed man Moses testified concerning him, saying that he might serve God by means of priestly ministration with praise, and that he might keep that commandment which had been entrusted to him by the compassion of God. And God made Adam and Eve to dwell in paradise. True is this word, and it proclaims the truth that the tree of life, which was in the midst of paradise, prefigured the redeeming cross, which is the veritable tree of life. And this was that that it was fixed in the middle of the earth. Satan's attack on Adam and Eve. And when Satan saw that Adam and Eve were happy and joyful in paradise, that rebel was smitten sorely with jealousy, and he became filled with wrath. And he went and took up his abode in the serpent, and he raised him up and made him fly through the air to the skirts of Mount Eden, whereon was paradise. Now why did Satan enter the body of the serpent and hide himself? Because he knew that his appearance was foul, and that if Eve saw his form, she would betake herself to flight straight away from him. Now the man who wished to teach the Greek language to a bird, now the bird can learn the speech of men, is called Badaga, Babbagh, or the parrot. First brings a large mirror and places between himself and the bird. He then begins to talk to the bird, and immediately the parrot hears the voice of the man. It turns around. When it sees its own form in the mirror, it becomes pleased straight away, because it imagines that a fellow parrot is talking to it. Then it inclines its ear with pleasure and listens to the words of the man who is talking to it, and it becomes eager to learn and to speak Greek. In this manner did Satan enter in and dwell in the serpent. And he watched for the opportunity, and when he saw Eve by herself, he called her by her name. And when she turned round towards him, she saw her own form reflected in him, and she talked to him. And Satan led her astray with his lying words, because the nature of woman is yielding. And when Eve had heard from him concerning that tree, straightway she ran quickly to it, and she plucked the fruit of disobedience from the tree of transgression of the command, and she ate. Then immediately she found herself stripped naked, and she saw the hatefulness of her shame, and she ran away naked, and hid herself in another tree, and covered her nakedness with leaves. And she cried out to Adam, and he came to her, and she handed to him some of the fruit of which she had eaten, and he also did eat thereof. And when he had eaten, also had he become naked. And Adam and Eve made girdles for their loins, of the leaves of the fig trees, and they were arrayed in these girdles of ignominy. Sorry, some of these words I can't pronounce, but for 3 hours. At midday they received their sentence of doom. And God made for them tunics of skin, which was stripped from the trees. This is to say, of the bark of the trees, because the trees that were in paradise had soft bark, and they were softer than the byssus and silk wherein the garments worn by kings are made. And God dressed them in this soft skin, which was thus spread over a body of infirmities. Adam's stay in paradise. At the 3rd hour of the day, Adam and Eve ascended into paradise, and for 3 hours they enjoyed the good things thereof. For 3 hours there were shame and disgrace, and at the 9th hour their expulsion from paradise took place. And as they were going forth sorrowfully, God spoke unto Adam, and heartened him, and said unto him, Be not sorrowful, O Adam, for I will restore unto thee thine inheritance. Behold, see how greatly I have loved thee. For I have cursed the earth for thy sake. Yet have I withdrawn thee from the operation of the curse. As for the serpent, I have fettered his legs in his belly, and I have given him the dust of the earth for food. And Eve have I bound under the yoke of servitude. Inasmuch as thou hast transgressed my commandments, get thee forth, but not sad. After the fulfillment of the times which I have allotted, that you shall be in exile outside of paradise, in the land which is under the curse, behold, I will send my Son, and he shall go down from the heavens for thy redemption, and he shall sovereign in a virgin, and shall put on a body of flesh. Through him redemption and a return shall be effected for thee. But command thy sons, and order them to embalm thy body after thy death with mirth, cassia, and skakte, Stakte, and they shall place thee in this cave, wherein I am making you dwell this day, until time when your expulsion shall take place from the regions of paradise to that earth which is outside. Now I want to stop right there for a second, because that just gave me one of the key points that I had earlier about King Arthur and the story of, King Arthur getting taken to Avalon, which in different cultures, worldwide, which I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but the Norse called it Agartha, Hindu Paradisia, the Greeks called it Hyperborea, the Celtics called it Avalon, and Buddhism called it Shambhala, and the Bible, like I said earlier, refers to it as the Garden of Eden. Now, what struck me odd was the similarities between this, because it said, God told Adam, but command thy sons, and order them to embalm thy body after thy death with mirth, cassia, and skatit, and they shall place thee in this cave. And like I said earlier, some say King Arthur still lies in a cave awaiting the day he is needed again. Do you see what I'm saying? Some of these stories ring true with some of the scriptures and stuff, and some of the stories that they, took out of the Bible. But look it up, Cave of Treasures, and I'm going to go ahead and continue reading from there. But I just wanted to bring that up. Until the time when your expulsion shall take place from the regions of paradise to that earth which is outside, and whosoever shall be left in those days shall take thy body with him, and shall deposit it on the spot which I shall show him, in the center of the earth, for in that place shall redemption be effected for thee and for all thy children. And God revealed unto Adam everything which the Son would suffer on behalf of him. Adam's expulsion from paradise. And when Adam and Eve had gone forth from paradise, the door of paradise was shut, and a cherub bearing a two-edged sword stood by it, and Adam and Eve went down in over the mountains of paradise. And they found a cave in the top of the mountains, and they entered and hid themselves therein. So Adam and Eve went down from that holy mountain of Eden to the slopes which were below it. And there Adam knew Eve, his wife, and Eve conceived and brought forth Cain and Lebehudah, Lebhudha. I'm probably pronouncing these way awful, but bear with me here. His sister with him. And Eve conceived again, and she brought forth Habhil and Kelimuth, his sister, with him. And when the children grew up, Adam said unto Eve, Let Cain take to wife Kelimuth, who it was brought forth of Abel, and let Abel take wife Lebehudah, who was brought forth with Cain. And Cain said unto Eve his mother, I will take to wife my twin sister Lebehudah, and let Adam take to his twin sister Kelimuth. Now Lebehudah was beautiful. When Adam heard these words, which were exceedingly displeasing unto him, he said, It will be a transgression of the commandment for thee to take thy sister who was born with thee. Nevertheless take ye to yourselves fruits of the tree and the young of the sheep, and get ye up to the top of this holy mountain, then go ye into, and offer up ye offerings, and make your prayers, and then ye shall consort with your wives. And it came to pass that when Adam the first priest and Cain and Abel his sons were going up to the top of the mountain, Satan entered into Cain and persuaded him to kill Abel, his brother, because of Lebehudah. I know I'm saying that completely wrong, but that's okay. And because his offering was rejected and was not accepted before God, whilst the offering of Abel was accepted, Cain's jealousy of his brother Abel was increased. And when they came down to the plain, Cain rose up against his brother Abel, and he killed him with a blow from a stone flint. Then straightway Cain received the doom of death instead of curses, and he became a fugitive and a wanderer of all the days of his life. And God drove him forth into exile in a certain part of the forest of Nod, Nodh. And Cain took to wife his twin sister, and made the place of his abode there. Now I'm going to stop right there on this for a second on the reading of the Cave of Treasures, and I'm going to talk to you a little about the history and where it come from. The Cave of Treasures was introduced to the world by Giuseppe Simon, how do you say that? Assemani, Assemani. Anyway, the author of the catalogs of the Oriental manuscripts in the Vatican Library. Well, that's interesting. Giuseppe Simon Assemani was born on 27th July 1687 in Hasrun, Mount Lebanon, into the Assemani family. His surname is related to several distinguished Orientalists and clergy. Assemani is an Arabic patronymic, whatever the hell that means, which means son of Simon. But this did not prevent him from being called Simon. When he was very young, in 1703, he was sent to Maronite College in Rome. Well, now it's all starting to paint a pretty picture, isn't it? And was transferred thence to the Vatican Library. Assemani graduated in 1709. A talented graduate at that time, he had written 3 essays on the Syrian grammar and theology. He was spotted by Pope Clement of the Vatican, who kept him in Rome and ordered him to catalog early Christian manuscripts that were brought in 1707 from Egypt by his brother Elias. In 1710, Giuseppe worked as scribe of Oriental manuscripts, translator from Arabic and Syriac languages, an advisor to the Congregation for the Review and Reform of the Liturgical Books of Eastern Rites. He was an ordained priest on 21st September 1710. Do you see how all this shit kind of ties into each other? I think it's just way too many coincidences that there's all these tales and lores, of the center of the earth, Agartha, Paradisha, Hyperborea, Avalon, Shambhala, and the Garden of Eden. However, if you look at maps that were, back in about the 15th to 16th century, they all had these islands on the maps, and then they just kind of vanish off the maps. And it's actually no surprise, to me anyway, that the Cave of Treasures was actually introduced by someone of the Vatican and written from translations from the Vatican Library. It kind of makes you wonder what else they lied about. They're literally coming out and putting all this information out here and telling everybody. I could talk for hours and hours upon this subject. Just history in general, not from what you've learned in, drooling in a textbook and all this other crap, but I'm talking about real, actual history, things that sound fictitious, giants. And I honestly don't think that Adam was, a little man like today's men, 6, 7 foot tall is considered to be, giant today, but I'm talking 36, 40, 50 foot, men tall as mountains, titans, the men of renown as they're called. These were the offspring of the Nephilim, from the books of Enoch. And I also think all these different manuscripts and stuff coming from the Vatican, and people saying, oh, well, it doesn't, it's not in the Bible. Well, it comes from the Roman Pope. You see what I'm saying? It's coming from the Vatican libraries. So the Cave of Treasures you can actually look up, and I do implore everybody to actually read it for more in-depth history of where we come from, other than, reading your Bibles and stuff, which is, of course, you need to, because they all literally tie in together, and there's, numerous chapters from the Bible that have been taken out, and they all kind of tie in together, and they paint a very different picture of our history and where we're at today. But I want to thank everybody for stopping by and listening, and y'all have a great day. God bless.